So adding to that, we were in the delivery room for about an hour. So the nurse that had helped me push Hudson out helped me, got me cleaned up, helped me stand up, walked me to the bathroom, made sure I could pee by myself. Like I said, got me cleaned up, and I think I had a catheter and pulled it out. I think I did have one of those. And anyway, I peed by myself, got me cleaned up, and then put me in a wheelchair. I don't remember if I went back to the bed and sat or not. I don't remember all the details. And anyway, we ended up going into the room we were going to stay at for the next 2 or 3 days. 2 days, since we were there Monday, delivered Monday night, and then we're there until Wednesday around 1 o'clock. Anyway, so they wheeled us in, as in me and the baby. I was holding the baby, going up the stairs, starting up the stairs, the elevator. And I just remember looking down and seeing my baby, like seeing his features, seeing his eyebrows, his lips, his nose, examining every little bit of him, looking at his hands, his little nails, and seeing his eyebrows and thinking, wow, he's got ice cube eyebrows. Oh my gosh, he's got like the perfect eyebrows. And then just holding him and thinking, wow, he's here. I can't believe it. Wow. And I thought, like, after such a very, hard pregnancy, I am so thankful that I had such a beautiful birth story of my little baby. One thing that I didn't mention earlier is that when I was in labor, I was bleeding a lot, and it actually concerned my doctor, which happened to be the doctor on staff until about 4 or 5 that day that I was going into labor. And she said, you know what, actually this is pretty common for patients that have had placenta previa, which is what I had. And I had, like I mentioned, a pretty rough pregnancy. I was in the hospital once for maybe like 2 or 3 days, and then I went back and I was there for, I would say, about 2 weeks, and then was finally released. It was very scary and traumatizing having to go through that experience and sitting in the hospital pretty much alone, not having my family that lives in Southern California up here. And also, I didn't tell them. I didn't want them to worry. I didn't tell them until like later on. I will say I am very thankful for my partner's mom, who was there and came to visit me a few times, and my partner's dad came to visit me also, and also my best friend, and I believe her mom did, and her sister did, and I think Jared came maybe once, twice max. And it really hurt my feelings that he wasn't there for me when I really needed him. I just felt alone, well, not really fully alone, because I had my baby there with me. And the entire time I was there, like, the nurses kept telling me that he was strong. Oh, wow, your baby is so strong, I had just turned 24 weeks, and they were saying that he was moving around in my belly and responding like if he was a 32-week fetus. Anyway, so going back to my point, I had a pretty difficult pregnancy, and being able to have like a pretty, good delivery and have him out in a couple hours and vaginally, which is what I wanted, was a true blessing. I will say, leading up to the point of me going through delivery, I did have to fight for that. My doctor had sent me to a specialist because I had gestational diabetes, and I begged that doctor, please send me to have another ultrasound, because I had an ultrasound weeks earlier, and that ultrasound tech, sent the findings to my doctor, who thought that there was a vein in the way of the birth canal, and she said, well, I've only seen this in maybe 1 or 2 cases, and if it is a vein, then you're going to have a C-section. And so anyway, like about a week later or so, I went to go see the specialist for, you know, to put me on diabetes medicine or something. And he's like, I'm not gonna put you on diabetes medicine. You're gonna have this baby in like 2 weeks. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm supposed to have an ultrasound that is right around the time I'm supposed to have a scheduled C-section. Can you please just send me to have an ultrasound? Please, is there anything that you can do? And so he made a call or something, and that day I got a call about scheduling an ultrasound, and they were able to get me in like the 27th of December, I think was the date that I had the ultrasound. They went in, I had an ultrasound. Thankfully, thank God that it wasn't a vein and everything was fine, and so I was cleared to have my baby vaginally. And so I am so glad that I was able to advocate for myself and also had the support of another doctor to push through having another ultrasound to get me cleared to, you know, be able to deliver vaginally. It was a very beautiful experience, be able to, you know, hear my baby be born and also be able to experience it. It was very painful, but thankfully I did have an epidural, and I felt it a little bit, like I could feel the contractions on my belly, but for the most part, I had an amazing epidural. Anyway, going back to the night after I had delivered, the night that I delivered, I don't really remember much. I just remember being very, very cold and wanting to shower and getting up and showering as soon as I possibly could. And I did that, and then just getting in bed and then just seeing him. They bring you like a little bassinet that stays in the room, and I was just freezing. You know, the nurses would come in every hour or 2 hours. I don't even know how often, but they would come in very often. And I just remember being so cold and standing up and trying to fix the thermostat, make it warmer, and then I couldn't. And then I remember having these moments with him where it was just him, Hudson, and I just quiet to ourselves. And I remember just holding him in my arms at like 3 in the morning and thinking, wow, you're finally here. You were the one that was in my belly. You're the strong one. And not having a name for him, you know, and going back and forth, like what was going to be his first name, what was going to be his middle name. It was either going to be Emilio, his first name, his middle name Hudson. And then I thought, no, I want him to have, you know, I want his name to be Hudson. And I was going back and forth, and I couldn't make up my mind. And I remember I called my mom and I talked to her, and she said, well, what name does, you know, your boyfriend want? And I said, he really likes the name Hudson. And he said, okay, let him have his choice then. Do you like the name? Yeah. Okay, well then, if that's what you want his first name to be, then if you guys decide, then go with that. Let the father have that choice, and he'll always know that he's the one that named his son. And so we named him Hudson Emilio. I feel truly blessed to have him. Anyway, after going off on that tangent, I remember leaving the hospital, and the nurse asked me if I wanted to be put in a wheelchair and wheeled down, and I was like, no, I can walk. And I was very sore and uncomfortable. I didn't even want to put my makeup on to take any pictures with him or any of that. And I do remember, actually, the night before I went to the hospital, I was so exhausted, and I remember, I really have to wash my hair. I should really wash my hair. And I didn't wash my hair, and I regret that. Anyway, it's fine. So my hair was in a bun, but it's fine. When I took pictures with Hudson, my hair was in a bun, but it's fine. Anyway, going back to the day that I was being released from the hospital, I walked down and remember that Jared went to go get his car, and you know, I waited outside of the hospital. They have like inside there's like these doors, and you can sit there or whatever. I remember waiting, and he drove up and grabbed Hudson, put him in the car, and I sat in the back just looking at him and seeing how tiny he was. You know, I didn't even mention his birth weight or any of that. He was 6 pounds, 7 ounces, 19 and a quarter inches. yeah, that's my birth story of how my son made it to this world. And I'm so thankful and truly blessed to have him here. So thank you for listening.